welcome back to Talking Shop, the Old Testament edition. We are on the 7th Sunday after the Epiphany, Genesis chapter 45, verses 3 through 15. Bob, give us the 10-second pitch of why we should preach the Old Testament this week.
Joseph is a type of Christ. That's why you should do this.
Good.
Here we have a dead son who is alive again, bringing reconciliation to those who were estranged because of their fear and their shame, because of their sin, are brought back in. God's salvation comes to them, comes to the whole family, but then also to the whole world. And so it's a very powerful text. I think we need to preach on it because God preserves life through reconciliation.
Awesome. Fantastic. Let's get after it.
Spit out my Lord in every way, yet I'm still welcome in the arms of the King.
All right, welcome back, Bob. Give us some context of where we are at in Genesis 45.
We are at the end of the book of Genesis. We are at the fulfillment in part of the Abrahamic covenant. This is where Joseph is reconciling with his brothers. It's a wonderful Sunday to be preaching the gospel about reconciliation in Christ. Joseph is a type of Christ, but we don't want to allegorize. I think that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake generally in Old Testament preaching anyways. But if you were to allegorize this text, you would say something like, well, I am Joseph, or I'm like the brothers. But instead, you want to keep Christ, and Joseph, because this text is asking a question: what is revealed about who God is? And God is at work to preserve life through reconciliation. And so when you stay away from allegorizing, you can hold on to that truth. And then you could ask the second question: how do I fit into that reality? And it has to be Christ who gets you there. So
good. Let's get into the text. Starting at verse 3, Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence.
Sam, what do you got?
Just all of a sudden, this guy who you thought you killed and that was dead just shows up. It's like, no wonder they didn't answer him, because they're just like, there's no way that this guy is alive right now.
Yeah.
Because it's been years since they last saw him.
Yeah.
And now, it's just no wonder they were dismayed at his presence.
Now, this is going to tie into how we do the gospel preaching for this. But that's exactly how the disciples felt when Jesus showed back up.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, yikes. You know what I mean? Because remember how they left things. They all ran away, you know. And, in Peter's case, denied him, and Judas's case, betrayed him. But like, yikes.
Well, yeah, you have that moment with the disciples here and then the brothers here where you know you've committed wrong.
Yep.
It's like, okay, sold this guy into slavery.
No way out.
Okay, we left our friend in a time of need, and then he ended up dying. Like, you messed up royally. And now all of a sudden that guy that you offended is suddenly back in front of you. You have that moment where you realize that you are such a sinner and so, just really bad stuff going on. I was trying to think of a word that was not a bad word, sorry about that. And so you just have this moment where you're like, oh no, I've messed up. And like, you just really get hit with your total depravity right there.
Yeah. There's no way of denying.
Yeah. I have no back door right now. I cannot slip out the back. That I'm in the presence of my sin.
Yep.
The person I've wronged.
Yeah.
It's like a cliffhanger at the end of a show. Like, where did this guy come from?
Yeah. Right.
And then the show ends and you have to wait a week till the next episode.
Yeah, for sure. And this whole experience in Egypt has been rough for them. And so for this to be the culmination, and now Joseph is like, no, it's okay. I love you guys. And they're like,
what?
Okay, then you're not really the Joseph then.
Yeah.
Because if you were the Joseph, then you would want our heads on a platter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
verse 4. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near.
Well, I'll do verse 6 as well. Or 5, excuse me. Yeah.
And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For for God sent me before you to preserve life.
Yeah. So this is the big turn. Adam, what do you think about that?
I think you hinted at it in the mini intro in the context about God giving life through reconciliation. I think this is where that sprouts.
Absolutely. If you want life, it comes through that moment where you realize that God is granting reconciliation. Yeah. So this is huge. I mean, again, the question was, what is revealed about who God is? God is at work to preserve life through resurrection. And we are sorry, not resurrection. Well, yes, resurrection, but reconciliation.
Joseph just came back to life for the years, right? So there is like a
There's a little slip, but it works.
little resurrection.
Yeah. But God preserves life through reconciliation is what I meant to say. And I think that that's opposite of what we think or expect. The brothers were trying to preserve their life through the acquisition of grain, you know?
Yeah.
But that
Getting them more stuff, so to speak.
exactly. And that would run out, and it did run out, you know? And so there's always this game when you're being transactional with people to preserve your relationship, right? But God actually preserves life through reconciliation, you know, which is better than bags of grain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Verse 6. You guys can stop me when you got something that you want to chime in on.
Do you want to do 6 and 7?
Sure. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve you for remnant on earth, and to keep you alive for you many survivors. And to keep alive for you many survivors.
Yeah. I just think this is great because it shows that God has a plan and he is enacting it. And it's a plan that he began all the way back at Abraham. And most rabbinic scholars, when they read Genesis, they actually think of it as a closed unit. I think for some of us, when we read Genesis, we're like, why isn't Genesis and Exodus all just sewn up together? Because it's one continuous story. But for them, the logical break in Genesis is at the story of Joseph, because if you start with Abraham, which God's covenant to him was, I will bless you to be, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and blessed will all be people through you. And we see that from Abraham all the way down the line, but we see that chiefly in Joseph, whoever blesses him is blessed, whoever curses him is cursed, clearly, and all the world came to be rescued from this famine. And so Joseph becomes like, hey, this is an excellent example of a fulfillment of the Abrahamic covenant. But even rabbinic scholars, and we as Christians are very quick to push that to say, but he's not the fulfillment. You know, that there would be a later fulfillment in Messiah. And so we see that God has a plan, and it was a plan to keep us alive. You know what I mean? He sent Joseph ahead, or he sent Jesus into the world to keep us alive. You know what I mean?
It's a foreshadowed fulfillment.
Apology.
Because I like alliteration.
Yeah, you do. That's funny.
So it is a fulfillment, but it's also a foreshadowing of the greater, grander fulfillment.
That is exactly correct.
I think it's so funny to me that the brothers don't know what Joseph's been through to this point.
Yeah.
But Joseph summarizes it just that God sent me before you to preserve you for a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So for the brothers, like, okay, he got sold. We know that much. And the next time we see this dude, he's second in command to Pharaoh. Yeah. He's had a pretty great life. Man, these years have been really good to Joseph.
And he's giving us the business, too.
Right. And so God's blessed him, right? God's saying you here, like, man, Joseph, like, no wonder he's forgiving us because, well, he's had it pretty easy, whereas we've had 2 years of famine. Now we're here, but they don't know. We know as the readers, but they don't know what Joseph has been through. I think it is so funny that's probably maybe what they're thinking.
Yeah.
And good for Joseph. Yeah. And what a score that we did. Good for us. We sold him into slavery. You know. But jumping ahead though, you know, verse 8, it was not you who sent me here, but God.
Oh, let's do verse 8. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just finish reading it. So it's not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt.
Yep.
So he abrogates the brothers of their guilt.
Yep.
And then says, it wasn't you that did this. It was God.
Yeah.
Right? God did this to preserve life of many people, of generations, but also, ultimately to preserve the life and the line of Jesus Christ himself.
Yeah.
Right? Because Judah was the one that came up with the idea to sell Joseph into slavery, and Jesus comes from the line of Judah.
Yeah.
And if none of this stuff had happened, then that line would have been cut off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all this bad stuff happened.
Yeah.
So that the line of the Messiah would be preserved.
Okay, what I like there is that leads towards the gospel, which means God took the initiative to take care of it.
Yeah.
It wasn't kind of the wiliness of humans and all that kind of stuff. There was God was working through all of that the whole time. And I think that's a gospel move because God shows the initiative. He sets the plan. He makes it come to pass. And Joseph's giving thanks to God for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Yeah. It just reminds me of Holy Saturday. The
Yeah.
silence of God does not mean the absence of.
Yeah.
He's working even when we don't think he is, or if we don't see he is,
Yeah, I like that. Adam?
I think that this is a good object lesson for folks who see the crumbling world around them, and they see the pain and the misery and the awfulness that is this reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that he still has his eyes on the Lord and says, like, he's not trying to have this fleshly fight with his brothers and blame them and get his own vengeance.
Yeah, their comeuppance, yeah.
He still sees, through everything that's happened to him, he still sees that God is at work. And that God is at work sometimes through hidden means that we don't see. Right?
Yep.
And so when we look around and we see all of the awfulness of this world, we can be assured that God is still at work, and that there's nothing that's too awful that God can't flip it inside out, turn it on its head to redeem and use for his purposes. Like Satan can't one up God and be like, you can't fix this.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
We tried that with Job, yeah.
like God is much more creative.
Yeah.
And if I can use the word crafty.
Yeah, that's the playfulness of God. Yeah.
Right?
Luther talks about that.
In that God always one-ups Satan.
Yeah.
Says, oh, you thought that you had them here.
Yeah.
But I actually had a greater plan here that you didn't see.
Yeah.
It's like the ultimate Lex Luthor. But for goodness, right? Like that's Lex Luthor's strength.
Yeah.
Is that like he's this ultimate planner.
Yeah.
Right? And that he and Batman, same thing, right? He has all of the contingencies planned.
Yeah.
And so God has all of the contingencies planned for Satan's evil.
I love that.
Yeah, you remind me of, I believe it was Augustine that likened the Christian life to rowing a boat, right? Where if you look at someone who's rowing a boat, they're going forward, but they're looking backwards, right? They're looking the opposite direction. So life is lived going forward, but it's understood looking backwards, right? So we can be going through some pretty terrible stuff, and we can not see God when we're going through that terrible stuff. But then when we've finally made it out, and when we've made it out, we can look back and see that God has been operating this whole time. And that, forgive me for my ignorance, or forgive me for my doubt that God was not working through, where does he make himself evident? Through suffering, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love
Got
that.
a little intense there.
No, that was really good. It reminds me of likely the experience of somebody in a Roman trireme, right? Where they're below decks, they're rowing, they're being compelled to row harder, faster, slower, stop, more on this side, more on that side. And how cruel they must think the person who's calling the orders out are, but he's trying to save their life because he's the only one looking forward.
Yeah.
And their perspective is that of people facing, the stern, You know what I mean? And yeah,
You're like in this room where you can't see outside,
Nothing.
but the person commanding can see what's going on. Be like, I need you to go a little bit harder on the left.
Yeah.
There's a big glacier right in front of us.
yeah. There's
Big rock.
a big enemy, big whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of what you were saying also about Job. Like the devil tried to shame God with Job's blessing, and so God said, "I will shame you, devil, with Job's faithfulness."
Mm.
You know, God in the book of Job, God is humiliating the devil, not Job, which is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Let's do verses 9 and 10, and then we'll do 11 through the end.
Hurry, go up to my father and tell him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Do not delay. You shall live in the land of Goshen, where you will be close to me. You, your children, your grandchildren, your flocks, your herds, and all that you have.
Yeah, good. Go ahead.
I will take care of you here, for there are still 5 years of famine. Otherwise, you will come to ruin, you and your household and all that you have.
Okay. All right. Anything you guys want to point out?
No, nothing. There's just there's some good gospel for the brothers, man.
Yeah.
You know, they're just bring everyone. And this is not Goshen, Ohio.
No, it is not. Praise the Lord. So funny.
But yeah.
Despite the brothers' attempted murder, he still takes care of them and still provides for them.
Yep.
And them and their households.
Yep.
And all that they have.
Yeah. Very good.
The grace and forgiveness required to do that.
And to just live in it in Goshen. You know, live in a place of grace.
Yeah.
What do you
at what point, I mean, I'm thinking of the story of Joseph, you know, like the whole entire story now to this point. And, you know, like he's become fully Egyptian, right? Yeah. I mean, I feel like at some point in time, you know, he's got this new name, he's got this new job, he's got this new wife who's an Egyptian, all this stuff.
And a daughter of a priest.
Right. Exactly. So at what point in time, I guess in Joseph's life, and I don't think it's in the text, did he just kind of like surrender to the fact that he may not see his brothers again? Or like, or
Yeah.
when did he decide that if he does see his brothers again, he's just going to forgive them? Like, when did the forgiveness come? Was it upon seeing them from afar? He was like, was it compassion? You know, I'm thinking of prodigal son stuff.
Or anger to compassion.
Yeah, right? You're just, oh man, these, like, yeah, they try to kill me. And I'm like, I finally, when I was in jail all these years, I was plotting their death and demise. Or like, when did it become? I don't think that there is anything in the text that says
no,
the movement happens.
But homiletically, that would be a very interesting point to develop and not solve.
Right. Yeah.
So don't pick it and say, well, it happened definitely here, but develop that because that matches the experience of your hearers. When are you going to forgive that parent?
Right.
Or that spouse, whatever, or whatever. You develop just kind of, you all know how this feels. I wonder at what point it happened for Joseph. Well, I don't know exactly when it happened for Joseph. I just know that it eventually happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know what will be the thing that turns in your heart, but you know, maybe it's eventually when you see the reconciliation of Christ.
Yeah. And I know Joseph is better than me. Like, but
I don't think so. I think he's just like us. Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, maybe just think in your own life. When does anger?
Yeah.
I have to think that Joseph was angry just a little bit at his brothers for doing what they did. But when does anger turn to the desire of compassion and reconciliation? When do you want to let go of just anger and then just be like, hey, I just need to reconcile. Yeah. You know, I did this thing, they did this thing. I don't want to be angry anymore.
Yeah.
I just seek reconciliation and compassion on them.
Yeah. It's great.
I don't know.
Great.
I don't know.
Yesterday when we were recording the epistle edition, I made a Star Trek reference.
Yeah, you did.
And I'm going to make another one today quickly.
This is a Star Wars. podcast. I'm just kidding.
So in Star Trek, there's this mirror universe where like everything is like the opposite.
Yeah.
This is like the mirror universe to the Count of Monte Cristo,
Yeah.
where like Count of Monte Cristo, he goes and gets vengeance,
He
and
tries to be satisfied in vengeance. Yeah.
but in this one, he doesn't get vengeance, or the vengeance is living in the forgiveness.
Yep.
This is like
Yep.
the mirror universe story of the Count of Monte Cristo.
Very good.
Nice.
Verse 12. Pay attention. Your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. You shall tell my father all about my position of honor in Egypt and about everything that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here. He threw his arms around his brother Benjamin's neck and Benjamin wept on his shoulder. He kissed all his brothers and wept over them. After that, his brothers talked with him.
I think verse 12 it reminds me of the resurrection of Jesus. Behold, your eyes are seeing, and the eyes of my brother, that it is my mouth that is speaking to you. It's like when Jesus shows up and he's like, and they're all freaked out, and he says, look, it's me. Touch, see, give me some broiled fish because
I'm hungry.
I love that stuff. You know what I mean? I'm saying, and so this is very resurrection-y kind of talk. I love also here now, earlier Joseph talked about how God took initiative, but here we see Joseph taking initiative as well. They have fear and shame, and Joseph allays that so that they can be reconciled. The gospel lesson, I think the only time in the gospel lesson this week is when Jesus says, love your enemies. Well, Jesus is the one who loves the enemies of God. And how does he do that? He takes the initiative, and he goes to the cross, and he dies and he rises. And here at the end of Genesis, we have a dead son who's alive, and there's reconciliation and God's salvation for that family, but also for the whole world, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a great text.
It's a great text.
It's great.
Any other closing thoughts?
No,
I'm exhausted myself.
All right, good. All right, if you would please subscribe to Crafted Preaching on YouTube and share this video with another preacher. We would greatly appreciate that. Get together with another preacher, talk about preaching. Your preaching will be blessed. Their preaching will be blessed. The kingdom will be blessed. And God bless your preaching.